So, welcome to B.I.V.I.P. Special Edition. I'm here with my buddy Paul. I am the notorious B.I.V., and you are my lovely VIPs for the next however long. And Paul is. Oh, do you want to be Paul?
Sure.
Does that work?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I should have checked with you beforehand.
All right. Cool.
Okay. So, I still go by like. I know like we're getting less and less anonymity online. But because like it all started out anonymously, right? Like I still kind of.
You trying to keep your real
I still
name
kind of cling to
anonymous?
that, right? I still like want to be anonymous. I don't know.
That's cool.
I mean, yeah.
My Instagram is like paul.g.walton. It's not very.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my Facebook is like Paul Gary Walton.
Yeah. Well, so you're out.
But maybe I shouldn't.
You're friggin' out.
Maybe I shouldn't. I don't know. But it's a little late now.
You just outed yourself. No, I mean, I guess, it's just a weird concept, right? Like if say my YouTube, I have like 800 subscribers right now. It's a tiny YouTube channel, and that's fine. But say, like, I blew up, right? And like, I got, like, now I have 1 million subscribers or something. Like, do I want them to know, like, then like people can come to my house, or they can like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
you know the Holderness family?
Holderness, it sounds familiar.
They do a YouTube channel.
Oh yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah,
they pretty much use their real names and their kids and everything.
Right.
But I have no idea where they live though. Anyway.
They're way funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so Paul and I, we were, so I moved into your neighborhood when we were 7, and went to your school and your church and everything, right? Like when we were 7, I moved into your life. We've known each other ever since.
Yeah.
So,
we went to the MTC on the same day, on October 5th.
Right.
Is it October 5th? October 3rd? I don't know. It was in October.
Yeah, something like that. But so today's topic, well, so here we are. So today's topic, I wanted to talk about something we both grew up with, which is the Satanic Panic, which it's called now. But back then it was just like the environment. Yeah, it was just the environment we grew up in, right? It was just what it was. But but it's been on my mind lately because like I've gotten into this band called Ghost. Have you heard of Ghost?
What kind of music do they have?
That's a good question. It's a controversial topic because they come from Sweden, and they have this whole kind of, their whole deal is like, their shtick, I guess, is like they're this satanic church, right?
But they're not really. They just pretend.
Yeah, well, like so like the lead singer dresses like the Pope, kind of like he's the evil Pope or whatever, and his band is like they're all like his minions or his ghouls or whatever, and they all dress exactly the same, but they have like masks, the same masks. They all have like these little like devil masks or whatever, and right, and you're like, oh my gosh, this sounds like weird and crazy stuff. So the controversy is that like they look like that and they kind of have that image, but like,
is it all
but their music isn't
a facade?
Their music isn't like super like dark, whatever, metal, right? Which pisses off a lot of people because they're like, oh, they're not metal or whatever, like they're not, and they're kind of been marketed as like metal and whatever, but they're not like, but their music is more, it's more accessible than like weird metal stuff, right? I think it's more like, it's more retro kind of music, like I think they sound a lot like Blue Oyster Cult. Have you ever heard of them?
Mm-hmm.
Like Don't Fear the Reaper, right? They sound a lot like that. like just kind of. So they're rock, they're metal, they're I don't know what they are, but they're cool. They're interesting, and so they. But anyway, this video is not about ghosts, but that's why. But that's kind of why I was thinking like the Satanic Panic, because and they kind of make fun of that sometimes. The Satanic Panic. I think one of their EPs or something is called 7 Inches of Satanic Panic or something. Anyway, but so my first I remember when I was 7 and I moved into your neck of the woods, and right about that time, this one day, my parents they took me to this house to play with this kid named Nicholas. And I don't know how they knew Nicholas's parents. And I think this is like the only time I ever remember hanging out with Nicholas. But like they took me to Nicholas's house this one day, and I'm hanging out with Nicholas. We're just little kids, and I don't know if he had an older brother that was like into Kiss, or if like his parents were just into Kiss or whatever. But like this kid Nicholas was like super into Kiss, and he's all like showing me all his Kiss albums and all this, Love Gun, and he's showing me like this little cardboard like gun thing that came with the album, and like you could put it together or something. A love gun. I don't know. Like he just was seriously super into Kiss, and I'm just like, oh, okay, whatever. And he had like a comic book of Kiss where they're like superheroes or whatever,
So crazy.
Yeah. And so I was looking at the comic and stuff, and so I come home from that, and I'm like, oh yeah, like Kiss, they're way cool. I mean, I didn't, and I don't, and I've never liked Kiss's music. Like I thought it's pretty dumb. It's I want to rock and roll all night and party every day. Like it's just dumb stuff, right? It's never really appealed to me. But like as a little kid, I was like, oh, those guys look cool or whatever.
Right.
And then do you remember like Kiss had a Halloween special on TV?
That's what I was just thinking of when you're talking about that. I remember some TV show where they have like superpowers.
Yeah.
I don't remember hardly anything about it except for it was like, oh, like are they people? Are they like monsters?
Mm-hmm.
What's going on here? Are they like Are they like superheroes?
Right.
I don't know, because we were just kids, but I just remember it being kind of cool, really interesting, but not really understanding the full, what was really happening or what it was about. Yeah.
I remember like seeing, I was like, I just remember seeing the ads for it or whatever, and I was like, oh, hey, Mom, Dad, can I watch the Kiss show, the Kiss Halloween special? And I remember they were like, oh, no, I don't think so, Like
it seems like they're like jumping, like super jumping.
Yeah, and they're like breathing fire.
Yeah, breathing fire. Yeah.
Yeah, which was like that was part of their stage show too. But
right.
But like this, they were like had actual powers. I don't know. But like my parents didn't let me watch it, right? And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. And I was kind of bummed, but so I never watched it, and it was. From what I've heard, it was pretty crap anyway. So I wasn't missing much. But that was like the first kind of experience I had with like that whole thing. And then of course, and then you mentioned D&D, which got pulled into it as well. So like you and I think we were like into D&D like
elementary school. I think
when we were 8 years old or
so. I started
right?
playing. Yeah.
Like I remember.
Of course, we didn't know what the crap we were doing because we were too young.
Yeah,
I think it was more like junior high when that. Oh, maybe it was junior high. Maybe I played with B.I.V.I.P for the first. Oops, now I'm using other. Should I not use people's names? Anyway, no, I think I played for the first time in elementary school.
No, but you and I
think
were
in junior high is when I got like the first like that light blue basic D&D manual. I think so.
Because I think I got the Monster Manual when I was like 8 years old.
Dang, really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And I was like, I'd like look through the, and I remember you had. Do you remember you had like deities and demigods, and it was like the first edition, with all this like copyrighted stuff in there.
Oh yeah,
that
yeah.
they just threw in there that like, and then they got
like
in trouble
there's
for
stuff
it.
from Cthulhu.
Yeah, there's Cthulhu stuff.
Yeah, they have all these different. It's like all these different belief systems. Like, oh, let's put Native American gods in here. Let's put, like Thor, and let's put Greek gods in there. And anyway,
did they have Lord of the Rings stuff in there?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. They had Elric.
Yeah, they had
Elric?
like people's like somebody's fantasy novels or whatever, right?
Yeah, that was Elric.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had stuff like that in there. So, which it was pretty cool. But
I still have it.
Oh, do you?
Oh yeah.
It's probably worth a ton of money.
You think so?
Yeah.
Even though I colored in all the pictures.
even with that, probably. But do you remember? So there was like another like thing on TV that was about with Tom Hanks in it. Do you remember that?
Monsters and Mazes.
Yeah, Monsters and Mazes. And so like that was about like the dangers of D&D or whatever.
Yeah, I think that was kind of like the social commentary on, oh, look what's happening.
Yeah.
Look what can happen if you are emotionally disturbed or unstable. Look what could happen if you think you're role playing, you think this is real, then it could like put you over the edge, and the next thing you know, you're like wandering the streets killing people because you think they're a goblin in an adventure or something.
Right. Which was
crazy.
Yeah, well, it was funny. Well, I guess the thing about it is like, so my parents and I watched that together.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, when it was on TV, and afterwards, I think they were like kind of, so what do you think of that? Or whatever. And I was just kind of like, I don't know, like that's not me and my friends.
Right. Finding like a real, what were they, like in a mine or a cavern or something to like set up their adventure? Like we didn't ever go anywhere. We were just like in our houses.
But I think like at the very end, like Tom Hanks is like on top of a building, and he's like he thinks he's gonna cast a fly spell or something like that, right? He's like gonna jump off the building.
Well, I think at the very ending, it's very negative because he's still like in some insane asylum or whatever, like, some psychiatric ward, and he still thinks that he's in a fantasy world. He still talks like he's his character instead of his real person or whatever.
Yeah, but the funny thing about it though is like, so it was kind of like, do you remember? Have you heard of Reefer Madness?
I don't know. Maybe.
So it was like an anti-marijuana type movie that was made.
If it was a movie, then no, I don't think I've heard of it.
It was made back whenever, I don't know, in like the 60s or something, maybe. Probably, because that's when marijuana was getting all whatever. But people would, so in it, all these people, like they're smoking marijuana and they're doing all this crazy stuff. Like they're getting all violent, or they're like hallucinating or whatever, right? And so people who actually did marijuana were like, well, you guys obviously don't know anything about marijuana, because like that's not what it does, right?
It's more like Cheech and Chong, where they're just like super laid back and chill and laughing or whatever, right?
But that's kind of how it was when I was watching Mazes and Monsters, because I'm like, well, like D&D doesn't do that to me, like it doesn't do that to my friends,
right?
Or whatever, right? But so there was that, and then I remember, so when we moved here, I remember like my next door neighbor, I let him borrow one of my D&D books. Like I was playing D&D with him, and I'm like, oh hey, you can borrow my book or whatever, and he took it home. And then he like came back, and he was like, "Oh, my parents said like I can't, like," and I think he said, "My parents said it's a cult." And I was like, "What?" And I said to my parents, and I went to my parents, and I was like, "Is D&D a cult?" And they were like, "Well, not really." And
that doesn't even make sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know.
I mean, in order for it to be a cult, wouldn't you have to like have some leaders that are teaching you things, and they want you to show up to meetings, or
right?
You know.
I'm gonna shut the door.
Anyway. I mean, if you're buying a book or books, and then you're playing a game with your friends, how does that? I don't know how that could constitute a cult.
Well, but I mean,
Whatever.
it was the whole like thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's just what
Unless they're using it like the term of like, oh, this movie is a cult classic, and so lots of people enjoy watching that movie. But that's not the same thing as a.
I think they meant
cult.
like it was like occult or something. You
know? Or
something. I don't know.
I see what you're saying. Not a cult.
Right.
Like it's promoting the occult. I gotcha. Okay.
Anyway. But I remember that happening, and that was like, okay. But then there were a lot of like, there were a lot of like fireside speakers and stuff who would be like, would talk about, AC/DC and Queen and backmasking and like I remember, or Led Zeppelin, like Stairway to Heaven was one they'd always mention. AC/DC, Hell's Bells. And then another one, Bites the Dust by Queen, had like backwards messaging supposedly that said like smoke marijuana, right?
When I was on my mission, there was a tape that was circulated, and it had like this guy speaking, and he'd play the music, and then he'd play it backwards.
Yeah.
And it talked about all this stuff.
Yeah. So anyway, that was like kind of a constant, but you and I never really were into like those bands, right? We weren't really into like rock bands and stuff at the time, so I never really worried about it all that much.
Yeah, I had friends in high school who were really into Led Zeppelin, and I was worried about them.
Yeah.
Because they were like, hey, look, we're going to listen to, they put the record on, they're like, look, we're going to listen to it backwards. And you're like, and I'm like, so you know this and you still listen to them? What is wrong with you,
That's funny. Yeah. So, but do you remember when Duran, I was like into Duran Duran, and I remember when they did that Union of the Snake. Do you remember that song?
I don't think so.
No? Well, it was like, it was this weird song, because like normally they just sing about like girls and whatever, girls on film in Rio and all that stuff.
Right.
So like they came out with this song called Union of the Snake, and it was like I mean, they were singing about some weird snake cult or something, and like the video, is like all this like kind of weird, scary stuff, and so like I was super into Duran Duran at the time, and they came out with that song, and I was like, what is this? Like what the crap?
Weird.
Yeah,
I don't remember that.
Yeah, you'll have to check it out.
Okay.
Yeah, go look up Union of the Snake, and it was just like they weren't that type of band, right? And there was this one song, and I was like,
I remember thinking they were pretty cool, and they had a lot of catchy songs. And then when I was in college, we had like a best of tape that I listened to a lot. And after listening to it, I was like, pretty much every single song is about sex.
Yeah, they were pretty risque. But
that's not the same thing as Satanic.
But that kind of went over our heads, I think, at the time.
I think it wasn't until college I was like, every single song, just about.
But I remember too back in the day, and I can't confirm this because like I looked it up the other night because I was like, I remember hearing like Kiss got banned from playing here.
Oh, really?
At one point, you know. But But again, like I couldn't find anything on the internet that says anything about that. But I remember hearing that, and I was kind of like, and it kind of like it made sense to me. Like, oh yeah, I could see Kiss getting banned or whatever, right? And so like the whole thing kind of came full circle for me when I was in 2002 when we had the Winter Olympics here, and Kiss like played the closing ceremony.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
And yeah, I was watching the closing ceremonies on TV, and like there's Kiss like playing their songs or whatever
with their makeup and everything, their costumes and everything.
Yeah, and all these. And there's all these old dudes like sitting there, yeah, Kiss or whatever, and I'm like, and I'm just like, okay, so this supposedly satanic band that was banned from playing here, now you have them at the Winter Olympics. You know what I mean? Like that was just, at that point I was just like, what was that all about? Like why was everyone freaking out about that? Like obviously, like now I'm watching them at the Winter Olympics and it's just like this thing.
Well, it seems like, I mean, I'm assuming that a lot of the things that people were freaking out about, they realized they really didn't know what they were talking about. There really wasn't a whole lot of...
Yeah. But I can see, there's always going to be like a like a small percentage of people, or like a certain group of people that are going to like take things the wrong way, right? Like they're going to listen to, Highway to Hell and be like, oh yeah, I'm going to ride the Highway to Hell. I'm going to be like AC/DC, right? And then they like end up, like it does affect them. Hold on. So people will take it, like take the message seriously or whatever, right? But I think for the most part, like when I hear Hell's Bells on the radio, which I don't really listen to the radio anymore, but when I was commuting to work, I listened to radio all the time, and like, okay, Hell's Bells by AC/DC comes on, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is a cool song, whatever. But I'm not like going, oh yeah, like Satan's cool or whatever, right? Like I'm not taking it that way.
Right.
I'm just like, oh, this is a cool song or whatever. So, and I'll use this example too, like Usher sings this song about like making love in the club, right? And he's like totally into this girl, and he wants to make love to her right there in the club on the dance floor or whatever, right? And I'm like, I like the song, and I can like relate to it as far as like desire and like passion, you're in love or whatever. But I'm not like, oh man, I want to like take my girl and go like make love to her in the club, man. That sounds awesome, right? Like I wouldn't do that, right?
Right.
It's just dumb. And I don't even know if he means it literally or if he's figurative or whatever.
Right.
But like, right? But like, I can listen to that song and I'm not gonna go do that, right?
Right.
But then again, some people, like a small group of people, maybe would, right? Like they'd be like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, and then if you think about back to like Monsters and Mazes, so it's like, most of the people in that show are just fine, but it's Tom Hanks's character who's mentally unstable, and because he's mentally unstable, he's the one that takes it too far, and then next thing you know, he's running around in alleys killing people because he thinks he's on an adventure and everybody's a monster or whatever.
Right.
So maybe if what I was telling B.I.V. about earlier,
yeah,
is what I remember most about this is that there would somebody would commit suicide. And then people would say, oh my gosh, this teenager, or however old this person has committed suicide. Well, what happened? What led to that? Because everybody's astounded, like they couldn't believe that would happen. And so they're like, oh well, what was this person into? Oh, they were into heavy metal. Oh, they were into Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
So then it's like, oh well, then that must have been the cause, because people need an explanation. Because they have to try to feel, they have to ask themselves, like, did I have something to do with this? Was there something I could have done? And there's like, oh, well, there's a scapegoat. We can blame this. And then, not to say that parents should feel terrible. Like, I'm sure they already feel guilty if their child commits suicide. That'd be awful. But I'm just saying, when people are grasping for straws and they're like, oh, well, let's point at this and let's blame this, you know.
Yeah.
And so.
Or like it makes a good media story, right? If you're like, oh, why did this kid shoot up the school? Well, they were into Marilyn Manson, or whatever. And
right.
Like,
so then maybe you could say, oh, well, maybe for the average person, maybe they're going to be just fine. If you're grounded, if you have your belief system, but maybe for some people it's going to push them over the edge, and so.
But so.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that I have a lot of credence in that. I'm just saying that's maybe that's what people were thinking back then, you know.
Yeah, but I would say, like, you shouldn't, like that song shouldn't be not made or banned or whatever because it might affect like this little group of people. You know what I mean?
Well, and the question is, were any of those bands actually satanic? And is Dungeons and Dragons actually satanic? I don't think so.
I think there are very few bands that like actually claim to be satanic.
I think it goes back to your original band. You were talking about Ghost. I think people are like, hey, what can I do to look like we're bad?
Well, they're very tongue-in-cheek.
Rebellious teenagers will think we're cool, even though.
Yeah.
Are they actually satanic? I don't think so.
Yeah, well, like bands like Wasp. Back in the day, and like all these bands, they would kind of like try to put that image out there, but now, like if you look at interviews with most of those bands, like almost none of them are like they'll be like
promoting Satanism
we weren't about Satan.
Yeah,
we just like that just sold records or whatever, right?
Yeah, I think Marilyn Manson's another one where he's a very intelligent person who knows what kind of image to create to get a certain, to get people talking.
Yeah.
Because he's very controversial.
Although I think he is like in like the Church of Satan or something.
Oh, is he really?
Something. Yeah.
Oh, weird.
But
I don't know that.
But yeah, I mean, like very few of those bands actually, And Ghost has said that. They're just like, well, we're not singing about like the biblical Satan. We're singing about like the commercial, like, scary monster Satan or whatever. Which,
what does that mean? Okay,
whatever. Well, we should have you react to a Ghost song one of these days.
There you go.
I could play it. Anyway, that's I guess the Satanic Panic. And we survived it, Paul. You and I survived it, and we're not.
And it's interesting because we grew up.
We're not Satan worshippers or dead or.
We grew up with very religious parents.
Yeah.
And they didn't seem to care too much about us playing Dungeons and Dragons. Maybe if we were listening to heavy metal all the time, maybe that would have been different.
Right.
But a lot of people, like you were saying, a lot of people were like, "Oh no, Dungeons and Dragons." It's funny. So my brother, his friend, is now a really good friend of mine, and his parents didn't want him to play Dungeons and Dragons. So the only way they could role play is if they made up their own game. So they basically made up their own game so that they could role play, and then they figured it wasn't satanic.
Yeah. So it wasn't Dungeons and Dragons.
Right, because they made up their own game. So.
Yeah. Nice. Anyway, cool. Well, yeah, that's all the time we have. We're almost at half an hour.
Are we? This has been a long video.
Sorry, but that's cool. I hope you guys enjoyed it.
I did.
Yeah, and special thanks to my special guest Paul, and I hope to have Paul maybe on the show more, and that'll be cool. So, thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video, baby.